Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. Sorry for a little delay, but I'm happy to welcome everyone to Bianca MacPherson's opening artist in residency talk. I'm Jorge Jimenez, the studio manager at the American Museum of Ceramic Arts in Southern California. MOCA champions the art, history, creation, and technology of ceramics through exhibitions, collections, outreach, and studio programming. Today's artist talk focuses on the work of Bianca MacPherson, who began her long-term residency here in the AMOCA studio in August of 2025. America's Artist in Residency program, established in 2012, is one of the few long-term fellowship opportunities for ceramic artists on the West Coast. Our residency program, which provides artists an opportunity to produce or develop a new body of work, is funded through the generous support from Julianne and David Armstrong, Laguna Clay, and the Wingate Foundation. The next call for residency applications will be in January of 2026. Today, Bianca will share about her practice, past work, and future directions as artist in residency at AMOCA. Now, I'm excited to tell you a little bit about Bianca. Bianca MacPherson's ceramic work solidifies the psychological unseen. Drawing from the complexities of American history and personal experience, her forms instigate dialogues around identity, race, and perception, forcefully pressing us to confront the tension between what is seen and what is assumed through abstraction. Originally from Buffalo, New York, her work has been exhibited nationally. MacPherson received her MFA from Penn State University and her BFA from Buffalo State University, and has participated in residencies at Penland School of Craft, Haystack Mountain School of Craft, Watershed Center for the Ceramic Arts. Ceramics, MacPherson will be in residence at AMOCA from August of 2025 till July of 2026. Before Bianca starts her presentation, I want to remind everyone this talk is being recorded. There will be an opportunity for Q&A after the presentation, but now I will turn the presentation over to Bianca.
Thank you, George. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Okay. All right. Can everybody see that okay? Thumbs up.
Yep, you're good.
Awesome. I'd like to start by thanking AMOCA, the Wingate Foundation in Laguna, and all the donors here at AMOCA. I've only been here since mid-August, and this experience has truly propelled me forward. I'm really extremely grateful for the opportunity to make work and connect with this group of people, my cohort, the community here. So far, it's just been an absolutely wonderful experience. Everybody is so friendly and supportive. So thank you so much. After grad school, I really wanted more time. Penn State's a 2-year program, and you sort of like just get going. And I kind of really was strategic with wanting to do a residency next. So I think that this was the perfect opportunity for me, and I'm grateful. So this is kind of like more time to research and make and recover. So I want to break my presentation into parts, sort of like contextualizing who I am, the research that I'm interested in, and the work that I'm doing. I think in order to understand the work, you need to have some context about who I am. So I'm going to start by sharing a bit about my life, what brought me to ceramics, and the ideas and research I'm currently exploring, and just the themes I'm interested in. Okay. I was born in Buffalo, New York, which is considered upstate New York. It's like this tundra most of the year. I think Buffalo is a place that kind of has a lot of grit, not only because of the harsh weather, but also because of its political and social landscape. The city has long been one of the most racially segregated metropolitan areas in the country. White people make up about 76% of Erie County's population, but only 45% of the city of Buffalo's population. And Black people represent about 13% of Erie County, but 37% of the city of Buffalo. White residents are like heavily concentrated in the suburbs, a pattern shaped in part by racial zoning policies that begin in the early 1900s. Buffalo was once a major hub for steel jobs during World War I, which drew many African Americans from the South to the North in search of better opportunities during the Great Migration. For instance, my father's side of the family came up from Mississippi. Many settled in the white working class districts of Lovejoy and the South Buffalo, but honestly, Buffalo is pretty kind of like a big mix. So these are some family pictures of me and my brother and my mom and dad. My parents met in the 80s. My dad was a musician, and I think actually they met at one of his shows. I could be wrong about that, but I probably get a lot of like my razzle dazzle from him, maybe sense of humor from both. He and his band, I think, used to open for Rick James. So think like Leather, Jerry Curls. And on the other side of that, my mother was a Buffalo public school teacher, which is probably where I get a lot of that relentless curiosity from. So they were pretty contrasting personalities and sort of blending together. And like through that, my brother and I kind of like came to happen through their love. Moving on. I like to begin my slides with this side by side. While my parents didn't stay together, my mother and brother and I moved from the city of Buffalo to the suburbs. The photograph on the left shows me with my kindergarten class in Buffalo public schools. So it's this left picture with me in the blue dress. Actually, I'm wearing a blue dress in both. Um, Looking back, I think if you look, I'm kind of like, there's a levity in my eyes. I was surrounded by other kids who sort of looked like me. I didn't feel different in any way. I felt really comfortable and I think confident. On the right is a school photograph of me, I think from fourth grade. Though I actually switched schools in the first grade from Buffalo Public Schools to Williamsville, I had started first grade at 5 years old. So they sent me back to kindergarten because I was too old to, or too young to be in the first grade. So I repeated kindergarten. But you can really see the contrast between these two images. I went from being surrounded by diversity to being the only Black kid in my class. So I can only speak about my experience, but this really impacted who I was and the lens in which I'm viewing the world. So in these early years, my brother and I were maybe four of the all Black children in the entire school. And I sort of love photographs as archives because of their ability to tell such like blatant truths. Depending on when or how you look at them, you can uncover more truths as you kind of continue growing and evolving. When I look at myself in the photo on the right, I think about how difficult that assimilation was, not understanding why certain people maybe bullied me or treated me unfairly, including educators. I had to navigate a predominantly white institution at a very young age, and knowing there had been another kind of past life before that kind of made it even harder. So my mother raised my brother and me on her own. My dad was sort of like in and out. She was and still is such an important part of who I am. She taught in Buffalo Public Schools for years, and now at 71, she has her dream job as the vice president of the Buffalo Teachers Federation. She's really relentless in her passion for equity, and I really admire her. I admire her really deeply, and that's part of the reason why I'm really wanting to be an educator. Um, all of those changes and early traumas definitely impacted my learning. I had and still have what you would consider a learning disability. So I grew up with an IEP. I had an aide who read my tests to me. And it's ironic because my mom, of course, was a reading specialist. In many ways, that fracture and the effort to understand both perception and projection of others and myself shaped how I saw the world and affected kind of my learning and self-esteem. So I think it's important to kind of sort of understand that about me. Again, through the lens of what I'm looking at history, I'm also thinking about these things, thinking about access a lot too. So moving on. So as I moved into adulthood, I wanted to be successful, but I really didn't know how I was going to get there. I saw my classmates sort of memorizing and studying for the SATs, and I was like scared, you know. School was never easy for me. I struggled whether it was with learning or sort of being made fun of. And it was a pretty hard time. I graduated high school kind of by the skin of my teeth, mostly because I enrolled in a trade program. So that trade program allowed me to leave halfway through the day to earn credits, hours toward a trade. And I had always wanted to kind of like understand my own hair. So I loved making people feel really good about themselves. So I decided to train as a cosmetologist, and I really loved it. I think that was when I realized I needed to work with my hands, and it involved constant movement and sort of like on the spot problem solving. So I went to finish cosmetology school and became licensed. I'm actually still licensed in the state of New York. So if anyone at AMOCA needs their hair done, I can help you. I've worked a lot of different jobs and found ways to take care of myself. When I was 19, I enrolled in community college to sort of like study photography, but I didn't finish because, of course, I needed to get a job to take care of myself. So I relocated to Rochester to work a retail job. So it really wasn't until after that job ended that I gave myself another shot at education, and I enrolled in community college for photography. Um, I I I really loved the program in community college. I think it's such an important resource that we still have. And straight from there, and these are some of the photographs from community college, um, but once I enrolled in, like, once I finished and got my degree in photography from community college, I went straight to Buffalo State University to continue practicing the photography I had learned. Funny enough, the first semester at Buffalo State, I couldn't really get into the photography courses that I needed to get my degree. And of course, I ended up in a ceramics class. So that's kind of like the beginning. And I'll get back to ceramics in a minute, but it all sort of ties in. These are just some films that I really loved, both now and kind of growing up. My older brother was obsessed with 80s movies, and my mom would take us to the library and we'd sort of like load up on films, and I would binge watch them for hours. These are just a few that came to mind. Obviously, there's only one like slide, so, but there's a million more. I'm kind of like a movie junkie. Um, but I'm obsessed with light and shadow and kind of theatricality of things and how those elements can shape emotion, but also build atmosphere. I don't think I'm the first person that uses disassociation as a form of self-protection, but for me, that escape often took the shape of a deep love for film or like books or visual storytelling. Growing up in various PWIs and navigating much of that experience in solitude, I turned to movies, spirituality for like safety. At times, I found more comfort in science fiction than in reality. I often think of myself as existing in a liminal state. Liminal state. I think many mixed race people live within that threshold, moving between spaces, often beneath the surface of what is recognized or understood. For mixed race Black women in particular, there are often a lot of privileges that come and difficult contradictions that also shape our experience. I often ask, what has society done to me that it feels the need to exclude me from my own experience? In graduate school, my research and data collection confirmed that many mixed race individuals express similar feelings of absence, that their voices are either left out of the narrative or constantly being questioned. Again, I can only speak from my own experience, but the reoccurring sense of silencing, misrecognition, and projection from others has pushed me to integrate not only my identity, but also the larger structures that sort of shape it. America itself, our educational systems, and the political frameworks that define belonging. I think science fiction in many ways reveals more truth than the history we continue to recite as a country. And also Afrofuturism is also a framework I think about often, especially its connections to disassociation, spirituality, and the imagination as a site of survival. So this is some of the work that I did in undergrad. Swinging back to education, clay wasn't something I initially sought out, like I said, but something about it was like, as corny as this says, I think all clay people maybe say this, it came really intrinsically, and like I loved it right away, kind of like hair. That immediate response and that tactile sort of like world building, extracting what was in here and sort of like bringing it to the physical became super addicting to me. I found myself oscillating between the photography and the ceramics in undergrad and kind of like working between those mediums. I was drawn to ideas about environment, particularly systems and nature that can kind of like coexist even when they don't seem like they should. At the time, I was working a lot with water, sort of recording it, photographing it, exploring sort of this kind of fluid and the cerebral qualities that it has. It's a responsive language through form. I sort of took that idea and put it into the forms that I was building in clay. Many of the ceramic pieces, though, were sort of amorphous, and obviously I think they still are. Yet there was always this through line sort of connecting them. So in photography, I was making a lot of lumen prints and a lot of photo watergram studies. So a photo watergram, the one you see on the left and this third picture, are a process where you take photo paper into a dark room, you submerge it in water, flash a light across the surface, sometimes while disrupting the water, and then develop the paper. So it's not just like a picture of water, it is the water, and you take the paper and you develop it in a dark room. So that kind of cerebral quality to the water and kind of getting really interested in um, the psyche or the mind, that seed was sort of planted then. I was also really interested in creating like an environment for my ceramic pieces, which would like go beyond, and you think back to like the film, kind of like impact us on like a somatic level. So that kind of like started in undergrad. So here is those photo watergrams and actually ended up blowing them up. So I was really interested in creating the backdrops for ceramic pieces in the gallery for my thesis. So I started to mirror all these watergrams, which took on this like Rorschach ink blot quality, a reflection of doubling of the fluid forms. So I was really looking at kind of the connection, but like again in undergrad, you're like just scratching the surface. Um, Here's some of what I was building in undergrad above state. I had really great mentors. Colleen Toledano, she's been and still is someone that continues to help me on my journey. But just like really instilled confidence in me and having, I think, educators that really are committed to going above and beyond for their students, kind of like my mom, also stick out to me. And they're all women, so there's that too. But I was just starting to think about the self, but really kind of wasn't ready to open that up yet. But it was there. You can see on this pedestal with this crazy form, the backdrop, and I should have included that photo, but I didn't. But they were at my show at Buffalo Art Movement was huge space, and I kind of had these large enlargements, these enlargements of the photograms, again accompanied by the forms itself. So I guess they gave some context to the work. So right after this, I really moved straight from undergrad. Like once I graduated, I think I graduated in December. By August, I was at Penn State. So it was quick. Again, I'm a little bit of an unconventional. My timeline wasn't very traditional. So I'm a little older, but I'm not done. So this is my first semester at grad school. I was really interested in sort of kind of like getting at, okay, looking at the self and thinking about systems. So right after undergrad, as I was thinking through many of these ideas, I became really interested in examining systems of the binary. So you'll see with a lot of my forms, it's all black, white, and the gradient of in between. And I really like that idea because it kind of forces us to think about that idea kind of in a humorous way, maybe, but also in this expansive way. I became really curious, trying to understand my own history, both as a Black woman and as someone who's navigating the complexities of being biracial in America. And I'm not so sure I'm sold on the language of being biracial. I refer to myself a lot as mixed race. Biracial to me sounds like two opposing things that are at odds with each other, sort of competing. And mixed, though I have issues with that language as well, I think feels a little bit more representative of who I am. So I rarely saw people like myself represented in histories that were taught in traditional schools. So I began looking more closely at periods following emancipation and during Jim Crow era. I think a lot about ideas of worth and pride and identity and how difficult it is to cultivate those things when you grow up without seeing yourself reflected in the stories around you. Um, so I was just kind of relentless in the pursuit of looking for me in history. I started by thinking about the one drop rule and reimagining what it would look like if the hierarchy were turned upside down, kind of created a series from that and kind of let it take over. And I think this is, again, where that science fiction comes through because I started thinking about um, these amorphous drops and sort of like morphing and shifting, reflecting kind of sort of an inversion. I was also thinking about my own familial DNA and the ways siblings can be connected, share likenesses, but absolutely have no connection to each other in proximity to one another. So there's a lot. I can never tell all of it in 30 minutes, but these were just some of the things I was thinking about during grad school. So the next thing that I was really on a tear about, I feel like somebody said this the other day, Charlie with like the red lines and like kind of like putting them all together. Um, that is totally me. I I wouldn't say I think I'm not a conspiracy theorist at all, but I think the deliberate erasure of certain histories is kind of like blatantly obvious. And again, I think that, but it's also not. So how do we get this information across? But how do we also self-protect? So there's a lot there. And after my first grad semester in grad school, I felt the need to go even deeper. So I enrolled in this Harlem Renaissance class because I was like, I just want to see what this is going to be about. And it was sort of unlike any Harlem Renaissance class I've ever taken. It was taught by Dr. Ann Cross, another woman, who was and continues to be such an important mentor to me. The class offered a global overview of the period, and Dr. Cross encouraged me to tailor sort of the coursework to my own interests. At the time, I was thinking a lot about systems of identity and W.E.B. Du Bois' concept of double consciousness. I began working with archival materials and researching mixed race people and artists from that era. For me, that process felt a bit like time travel. I think that it was really interesting because there was so much going on just during that time period globally and looking at sort of the ripple effects of how that kind of waved out now. Um, yeah, I'm a little bit crazy when it comes to like connecting all the things in American history, but I think this period was extremely important. Um, I don't think of art history or history in general as something that's static. I think of it as something that's like active and constantly reframed through who we are and the lens we're kind of looking at it through. There's a lot within that research, but this image is one of the examples of the work I was doing with ebony and topaz. So how am I bringing like both of these ideas kind of together? And I came back to that Rorschaching that I was doing in undergrad. So this piece is called The Deity, and it was directly kind of influenced by mirroring the archival imagery of Charles Cullen's his illustrations, which he was a white illustrator and did all of these kind of illustrations for this magazine, this Black magazine, Ebony and Topaz. And he worked with County Cullen on his poetry. So it was like there's a lot that goes into it. Charles actually, nobody even knows like when he died. So it's just erased and gone, and we have to fill in the blanks. And it was really interesting to me. And So in many ways, grad school felt like a lot like early childhood. Penn State is not the most diverse place, and I often found myself wondering how I could bring all of these elements together about the psyche, identity, and form. The idea of mirroring resurfaced as the metaphor for kind of empowering this notion that we are made up of both light and shadow, good and bad, and that growth comes from being able to look at the harder parts of ourselves and allowing them to sort of transform us. So during this time, I created this form, again, like I said, the deity, which became my first mirrored piece. I even used an actual mirror while making it. My face is sort of like on the side, and it's really inspired by a lot of things. Sort of this area down here is like taken from my mother's cheeks, and this area here is me. And then I'm also looking at architecture, and there's a lot that I was looking at and surrounded by. But I think this piece in particular really started me off on that trajectory. Um, and where was I? One of those layered interwoven narratives in history sort of made me also reflect on my own. And I've always been interested in stories, kind of within stories like Inception, and the way America often acts as an unreliable narrator within its own history. So at a certain point, I realized that in grad school, I was like, instead of asking myself, like, what's wrong with me? Because I would also kind of tend to be really hard on myself. I needed, I was kind of like at a point where I was like, all right, I needed to acknowledge the ways that I also participated in that dynamic by also allowing it. So I kind of like the like rubber band snapped and abstraction sort of took over and became a really powerful force for me to explore. And there's so much personal and historical context embedded in my work, yet so much of it remains unseen or like unrecognized. And I'm okay with that. The ideas helped me develop a visual language of mirroring that I could continue to explore through later forms and through my thesis. So this is that piece sort of complete in my thesis show. And I'm just getting, now I'm like very interested in shadows and kind of the subliminal messaging in shadows and how that also acts as sort of protection. But that's like one thing that I have to put aside because there's a lot that I'm working through. But I'm also just going to show some of the work from that show. Um, This piece is called Butterfly Bones. My great grandmother inspired this piece and also kind of the mirroring of the water and again the ripple effects of kind of somebody being very important in your life and how delicate that relationship is. She's holding a butterfly here, and I don't know if you can see it. Hold on. She was probably just the greatest person that I can remember, and she had a woman. Had a great impact on me. Yeah. So this wasn't for my thesis, but this just kind of UCIC, just another form that I've mirrored. I was thinking a lot about pelvic bones and sort of the inside-outside relationship. More pieces for my show. Integration one, that's one of four. The other four series, like the larger ones, are the Watchers installation, which represent the four of siblings and some that I know and some that obviously I know my brother, but there are others. So again, I kind of delved into that, but some things I keep for myself. It's one-way mirror film and motion sensor lights. So it's all dark, but when you walked around, if you were interested enough, it sort of lit up and then the shadows cast like another pattern. So I'm thinking through like a pattern within a pattern. And then I'm also exploring glazed surfaces as kind of integrating those things. So here is kind of an overview of my solo exhibition Tenderhead and this piece on the left called Harmonic Divergence. My thesis Tenderhead was where everything really came together for me. I wanted to invert a traditional white gallery space. And I was thinking about how I could like implicate the viewer and these experiences that I had um, around the idea of an after image. So in photography, when you look at a negative on a light box and then you look away, the image lingers in your eyes. So it's a phenomenon that sort of like played a huge role in this idea. And trust me, painting all those walls was it was a lot, but it was worth it because even thinking about how we've gotten to a place of like stripping back and minimal is a concept that's rooted in racism. So I really thought about like every single thing in my show was extremely like detail oriented. The lights, I had to change the lights. I wanted light, like white lights. It needed to be interrogation. So it was kind of like this metaphor for feeling a certain way in a PWI, a predominantly white space, and sort of giving myself um, kind of bringing the viewer into that experience. Um, I paired that concept with that idea of implication. So, of creating something that's both beautiful and unsettling at the same time. The notion of hypnagogia, which is like that state between wakefulness and sleep, also came to mind because I wasn't getting much of it during that time. It became really central to this theme. So, there's 7 states to get into that rhythm of being between. And there were 7 pieces and stations in my show. Um, the work exhibition became this large thematic and sort of theatrical integration, sort of a process of letting go of how others might perceive me or my work, and instead holding up a mirror to them. I actually also handed out mirrors. So I was just on one, to be quite frank. I was like, listen, I'm going to pop off and I don't care anymore. And it felt really good to sort of let go. One piece in the corner, you can kind of see here, it was a tic-tac-toe game on a light board, and I used my own image as a like the game pieces, so the viewer could like play the game. But up here was a hidden camera, so you were being watched, and neither one of you were going to get it right. But as you went back into the gallery space, there was kind of like the idea of me watching you and kind of watching you play me. So that was a really important piece. This piece in the middle, harmonic divergence, I would go into different rooms in Penn State and record my name. So I took all those recordings and created a ripple pattern from the sound wave, and that became a pattern on the forms and on like the sand, and that the height of this like liminal sandbox was really important. So again, super informed. There were inverted images of me, super informed. I talk about proximity here, but moving on. So toward the end of this, for me, photography kind of continues to be in like super important role for me to both generate ideas, but also like ways of viewing. I do sketch, but a lot of the ways that I'm coming up with these forms is from the photographs that I take. I use my own forms and springboards for new ones, helping me see things from another perspective and also helping me take my own experience and sort of like constantly rework it. So that's really interesting to me. And here at AMOCA, let's see, this is kind of the work I've started to do right now. Here at AMOCA, I've been spending time in the Miriam Matthews Photographic Archive at UCLA, which is one of the largest Black photographic archives in California. And these spaces are public spaces. I think a lot about access, and I really sort of, before I put my application in, I spoke with some of the archivists there, and I was like, hey, can I, if this is a thing, is this, they were like, yeah, it's public space. And I think we don't think about how much information is actually readily available for you. You don't need permission. You can do the work on your own or look at things by yourself. It just takes the interest. And I spoke about this during my thesis defense, but sort of the meditative quality of clay and the way that engages both like left and right brain, I think have grounded me in really the somatic approach to learning and also teaching. Um, just thinking about being categorized or as someone with a learning disability, but really not having the context to understand why that maybe child isn't processing information the way that this system wants you to process. So I think that Clay sort of like ripped this whole new world open for me. And I'm like an avid reader. I read a lot, not so much, it takes a while for me to like retain the information, but that doesn't really stop me from like sort of going after it, and it also being inspiration for me and how I'm expressing my own feelings. And I think that's what is important for me to also bring as an educator. Um, so this process really helped me understand who I am and how I learn, which became central to my teaching practice. So I try to help and cultivate kind of assignments for students to understand how they learn and kind of letting that be empowering to them. Um, because I think once you unlock something, it's kind of like within yourself, you really, it's like when I started using the table saw, I was scared, absolutely scared to use a table saw, but then like once I like did it one time, I was like, I could build a house. So it's that crazy like delusion that makes you think like, you know, you can do anything you want. It might take you maybe a little bit longer and it might take you a non-traditional way, but you can really like do anything you want. I think that that makes a lot of sense to me now, but maybe back then I didn't really understand that. Um, the educational system often denies learning in a singular, like it's really tailored to a singular way of learning. But obviously, in reality, there are many ways to do this. Play is a great metaphor for that. There, you can learn things for 30 years and still continue to learn new things, which I think is what's so magical about play. I really champion this idea of abstract embodied learning. I think it's really important in what's going to be changing in educational spaces. So anyways, just to wrap it up, I think, you know, for any person sort of getting involved in clay or maybe education and it looks like intimidating, just don't let anyone tell you that you can't or that you don't belong. Things weren't built for a lot of us. And I think I'm more focused on what we can build as a solution and in integrating it all into like what we're building for the future. And I've done a lot of research in mixed race identities. I also was a co-organizer of the remixed residency at Watershed this past summer, and it was extremely validating experience to me that other people kind of felt the exact same way, and that's sort of taking on a new form now, and I'm working with those collaborators, and it's taking on more and more. So that's sort of all I have. I hope I didn't take up too much time, but George, I'm not sure what we should do now.
Thank you, Bianca. Thank you. So thank you so much, Bianca. That was such a great talk. We have some time for a few questions. So if anyone has any questions to ask Bianca, please feel free to write them in the chat. If you wanna unmute yourself to ask the question, just feel free to just use the little raise hand emoji and we could call on you. So I'll give you all a few little moments here, see if you have anything to type up. But I think I'll start off because I just want to piggyback, I think, just on those final thoughts of yours, Bianca, with I think like again what clay I think has been the tool for like your means of dialogue and communication. And it's at least from what I like my understanding is you have this great balance of all these different ideas coming together, but at the same time the form takes such an abstract way. So I just want to know like how do you keep yourself on track with all that layering, all the history, personal experiences, like the education, like, how do you
Yeah,
keep yourself?
I'm not sure I'm doing that, but I think somebody that I met, her name is Maureen. I met her at Pocosin with Natalia. She had this phrase called hold the tension. And it's kind of like a great metaphor for my work, I think, because a lot of the times there's so much that I want to research and there's only so much time in the day. And how can you like maybe hold that line, hold the tension? And I think that I'm a Capricorn, so I'm also extremely high functioning when it comes to like getting shit done. I will get it done, maybe at the detriment of me not sleeping, like this talk. But I just think that I'm really inspired. I feel like it's too at this age. I'm just getting started, so I think I'm re-energized in that way. So maybe kind of reclaiming that younger self now helps me to get all these ideas out. Um, yeah,
Right.
it looks like my mom asked a question.
Yeah, so her question is, can you explain the
Oh,
picture of the woman on the tree?
yeah.
Is that really?
So I was gonna put more in, but I also ran out of time. Do I have to share screen again? Let me
If you
see.
want to pull it up for to
Okay,
reference real quick.
so this I just added this for a little bit of context, but I'm researching when I was in the archives and I was going to put that in, but I thought maybe save that for the second artist talk that I do. This is a member of the Garrett family from the I think 1920s and 30s, which were in a completely mixed race family in California. I was so interested in just kind of her existence and they were extremely not prolific, that's the wrong word, but like like they were doctors, dentists, and sort of how could you navigate that? And the idea of this idea of kind of like picking at for pleasure, but also the privilege of picking. I just kept looking at it, and I sort of took inspiration from her clothes and thinking about my own sensation picking with my mom, like picking uh, peaches or apples in New York, kind of came to mind. And then also, obviously, picking as a means of survival or also picking as means like being forced to pick. So, kind of all those things converging into one. And so, though this form sort of was inspired by that form or by these pictures. And um, so what's happening and I don't have this up here, but what I'm doing is I'm scanning some of those like negatives from the archive and I'm putting them to Photoshop. I'm Rorschaching them, but then I'm also kind of taking the trace of them. So I'm going to try, and it has been sort of like a lot of digital work, which makes me a little bit like I have to be moving, so that sometimes it's a lot to me. Um, I'm taking the image and creating a pattern in Photoshop, but then I'm going to be transferring that exact pattern from the image onto form. So it's not going to, I'm always trying to think about how to put hidden context into forms. So I'm going to be taking some of the stories and interested images and transferring them onto ceramic form. So they're not just like inspired by, they are actually the pattern of the form, if that makes sense. And in theory, it's going to work out. But in the in the round, everything changes. So we'll see.
Nice. All right, just double check if anyone has any questions. Again, feel free to write them in the chat. Um, and then I'm just gonna piggyback off of that right now. More of like the translation between your work and then eventually when it's like, presented to the audience. Just like I don't know how loaded of a question this is or not, but how important for you that everything ends up gain, I guess like what's important for I think the audience to digest versus what you love to leave behind. I mean, even speaking with like your fandom of sci-fi, I think for me, I love the nuances where not everyone will get everything, and what's an Easter egg for some people, what's meant to be the message, stuff like that.
Um, uh, yeah, I think as an artist, you put things out and you're never gonna get that's like nobody's ever gonna get it. But I think through conversations, I'm the kind of person in the crit that's gonna be like, okay, so tell me like, I really want feedback, but at the same time, I don't give a shit. Like I think that I've gotten to this place now where I'm really interested in my form sort of taking on this identity for standing for the other, but also like you are in charge of whatever you think, and through your own lens of seeing and your own projection is what you're going to get from it. You're never going to, you can only meet like people and things as deeply as you've met yourself, right? So that I think reigns true for the form. And I'm not really interested in someone questioning me or questioning um, I think maybe that's a grad school thing, right? Like
Mhm.
you're constantly being put on trial. And right now I'm really not in that space. I'm more in the space where if you mess like if you mess it up, that is completely your own perspective. And that's fine. I'm fine with that.
Mhm.
But for the people that I end up like having conversations with that sort of like really clock it, they really clock it. I'm like, wow, you got all that. And funny enough, a lot of our history people, they kind of get it. It's really weird. Like they kind of get it right away, which is interesting to me. But I'm interested in it being empowerment for me, but also kind of this idea that it's okay that you don't get it. That's the point of the word. And
Great.
that's my experience, right? Like,
Mhm.
you're never going to probably get me. And I think what really matters is like what you get out of it and how it's viewed. But I do think that um, exhibition spaces are really great ideas and platforms for us to feel, and I'm really interested in not just plopping things on a pedestal or a plinth and like, here it is. I think that's kind of a ceramic thing. I'm really interested in like, what else can we do to go beyond these structures and ideas to like enforce or press us to kind of like get a little bit closer,
Mhm.
um, that we don't just take the first lick and we kind of continue to dig at what is really going on. I think that's kind of what we need as a country right now. It's extremely important.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank
Um,
you.
I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Bianca. Um, for more of Bianca MacPherson's work, visit her website at bianca-macpherson.com, and we'll drop that in the chat. If you're in the neighborhood, visit the museum, Ceramic Studio in Pomona, California, where you can learn more about AMOCA, our ceramic studio, the Artist in Residency program, and all our exhibitions at our website at amoca.org. Um, I just want to, again, a recording of this presentation will be available on AMOCA's website in the coming weeks. But I just want to thank everyone again. Thank you, Bianca, for such an insightful presentation, and we hope to see you all soon.
Hi, thanks, George. Thanks, Mocha.